So let's hear it for our home team. We are so blessed. So I've titled my talk this morning, The Good News, because it feels like we need some good news, right? So I'm seeking out good news because there's been a lot of division lately. There has been a lot of hatred that has been dominating the news cycle. And what's true is that a majority of the people on this planet are kind and peaceful and loving. Do you agree with that? Absolutely. In response to the shooting at the synagogue last week, thousands of people in Pittsburgh showed up at the synagogue to show their support and to stand with them. A Muslim group started a GoFundMe page for the funeral services. So we see always this outpouring of love and compassion after something like this. The challenge is that when someone is filled with violence and rage and hatred, that the damage that's done is astronomical, and it affects the families and the communities for decades. You know, I've been a minister for almost 35 years. I started when I was 10, so. And I have to say that really, honestly, since 9/11, I think probably before that, I can't count the number of times that I have stood up here after some kind of a tragedy that has occurred. And over the years, this community has responded to tragedies with loving kindness and prayers. We have blessed and prayed for the victims as well as those who have committed atrocities. And I am proud and blessed to be a part of a community that is so loving and kind and accepting. And you know, it's in our vision statement, which I had to actually go upstairs and get it. I haven't memorized it yet. That we are an accessible and inclusive spiritual sanctuary for all ages and stages of life. We offer spiritual practices and a community that honors diversity and encourages self-empowerment. We co-create a world that works for all. And you know, a vision statement is usually something that you never attain, but I think that we have attained this over and over again. Most recently, we have invited a Muslim prayer group into the church to pray here on Fridays because they had a mosque in Bellevue which was burned down by arsonists. And so they are currently without a home, and we have welcomed them here. And they're all ready. And they're already asking when we move into the new facility if they can come with us and be a part of that. And we're like, absolutely, absolutely. So we each have a part to play to step up and to heal this world. And obviously one of the ways that our voices are heard is by voting on Tuesdays. So if you haven't, Washington makes it so easy to vote, it's almost incredible. So you know, allow your voice to be heard and to get out there, if you already haven't done so, to send in your ballot on Tuesday. So today, after the service, we're starting a new class, and it's called The Gentle Art of Blessing. And Aaron will talk more about that during the announcement. But the author shares that he has practiced the art of blessing so that it has become a part of his life. Now, how did he fall into this whole idea? Like all of us, you know, through necessity. He said that he was working for a nonprofit organization, and he really felt like he was doing good in the world, and he was really, you know, he really had a prominent position, but somebody in the higher-ups didn't like him, and long story short, he ended up losing his job. And this hurt him deeply because he felt like, you know, he was in a position to really do some good in the world. And he found that he hated this man so much for what he had done to him. And he was so filled with anger and hatred and resentment that he said, you know, as soon as I get up in the morning, that's where I would be, and that's what I would feel, and all through the day and before I went to bed at night. And he said it began to consume him. And he realized that he couldn't live that way. So, and he was reading the scriptures and saw the one words of Jesus that said, if someone curses you, bless them. So he decided that he was going to try it, that he was going to try and bless this person. And so he said, what's interesting about it is it started as an intellectual exercise, right? And he would say, I bless so-and-so with peace, I bless so-and-so with joy, and eventually it began to turn. And it began to be something that was coming with sincerity from his heart. Because one of the things that he said is, a blessing must come 100% from your heart. It has to be directed from the heart and not the mind, even though we need to start with the mind if the heart is closed. So we've all been in similar situations, right? I mean, we don't live on this planet very long without being betrayed or treated unfairly or maybe even abused. And the truth is that if the resentment isn't healed, then it can grow into something that can take on a life of its own. And I know you've heard the story about the two wolves, but it really does fit with this, where the grandfather was talking to his grandchild, and he said to his grandson, I have two wolves inside of me, and they're always fighting. And one is filled with anger and rage and resentment and superiority, and the other one is filled with kindness and love and generosity and peace and joy. And the grandson said, Grandfather, which wolf will win? And he said, the one that you feed, that you have the same wolves fighting in you as I do in me. So Pierre, the author, found himself feeding the wrong wolf. He was feeding the wolf who was resentful and who was angry, and it was growing bigger and bigger. So he decided to make that shift. Now again, first he said it was just in his mind, but then it moved to his heart. It became a daily spiritual practice to the point where now he gets on a bus, he blesses everybody on the bus, not verbally, but quietly. If someone is angry with him or rude to him, he stops and he blesses them. And he said what's happening as we think about the wolf who is being fed is that it's taken on a life of its own, that his life has been transformed. And it's almost as natural as breathing for him. So we're going to have this class, I think, for the next 3 weeks. I invite you to attend. We've also heard a lot about random acts of kindness over the years, right? And I found a story, and of course the story took place in Canada. Where else would it take place, right? And this man who, he stops every morning and he gets a cup of coffee. This is in Ontario. His name is Glenn Oliver. And every morning when he goes through the drive-thru to get the coffee, he always buys the coffee for the car behind him and a muffin or whatever they want. And they know him now in the drive-thru. It's like, okay, here comes Glenn Oliver. He's going to pay for the car. And he just does it. Well, on this one particular morning, he paid for the coffee for the car behind him. And when the driver got up to the window, the person who worked there said, your coffee's paid for, and whatever you want for breakfast, that's already paid for by the car in front of you. Well, what nobody knew was that this person was going to commit suicide and was sort of doing like one last thing. I'm going to treat myself to one last cup of coffee and a muffin before I go home and finish myself off. And this person receiving the coffee and the muffin was so touched by this simple act of kindness that he went home and just did some serious soul searching and believed that it wasn't an accident that this happened to him. And actually, I don't know if it's a him or a her because the author of it is keeping their privacy. The way it was discovered is that this person wrote a letter to the newspaper explaining what had happened. And after doing much soul searching, realizing that this person was loved and valued in the world, and so decided instead to try doing one act of kindness every day. So which wolf are you going to feed, right? Is it the one that is in despair and loneliness and anger, or the one who is joyful and kind and generous? The writer said, to the nice man in the SUV, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and know that your kind gesture truly saved my life. I not only had a great day, but I had the greatest day. And again, the guy who bought the coffee was like, I was just doing what I do. So these are nice examples, but we're dealing with kind of more extreme levels here in the world. And I want to go back to the golden rule, right, that says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And this also fits because if you love yourself, if you love God, is it not easy to love others? Yet if you hate yourself and you don't like yourself, isn't it easier to hate others? And I think that golden rule so applies. The truth is that love is the force that heals wounds and divisions. Charles Fillmore said it is the great harmonizer and the great healer in the universe. And I think that most people are searching for a sense of belonging, a sense of connection, a sense of acceptance, and will do anything sometimes to get it. So I want to share a story with you about a woman who named Angela King, and she was raised to be a racist. She was told that she was superior. She was taught to fear people of other races. And she also never did fit in with anybody, like in high school, at school. She was kind of an outcast. And when she was about 17, she met some skinheads and some, metal rock or whatever. And she said it was the first time that she was embraced. It was the first time that she was allowed to totally be herself and that she was accepted by this group. Being part of the group, she became a card-carrying neo-Nazi, including getting racist tattoos all over her body, including on the inside of her mouth, she had tattooed Sig Heil. And not surprisingly, this group was violent, and she participated in violent acts. At one point, she was arrested along with other people for attacking a Jewish owner of a liquor store, and she found herself in prison. And when she's going into prison, she's like, uh-oh, I'm now going to be the minority. And I am covered with racist tattoos, and some of them I can't hide. I can't put on enough clothes to hide these tattoos. And so she enters the prison, ready to fight, surrounded by people that she'd been taught to hate her whole life. And she said she's standing one day in the rec room, and there's a woman of color who's just kind of staring at her and looking at her. And she's like, okay, this is it. And so the woman walks over to her, looks her in the eye, and she says, do you know how to play cribbage? And she says, cribbage? What in the world is cribbage? And she says, I got a cribbage board. Come on, let's sit down and play. And she said what happened was she was treated with kindness and compassion by people that she had dehumanized. And it changed her. She said, it was the first time that I actually felt free. It was actually the first time where I felt like I was human. And so in not hating herself, she no longer hated others. She got the whole thing of love your neighbor as yourself. And today she's leading an organization called Life After Hate, which is reaching out to people in extremist groups to bring them around. She learned that to treat others as she wanted to be treated meant also then to love herself. Now, another member of this organization, Life After Hate, who is also a part of an extreme group, his name is Tony McAleer. He said there's two common denominators in which cause people to change. And he said the first one is the birth of a child. And usually it's a daughter that that holding that newborn baby in his arms awakened and opened the heart, a heart which had been closed. The second common denominator that changes people is receiving compassion from someone that they don't feel that they deserve it from someone else, this act of compassion. So I share these stories because they're more extreme stories. Like we, as a community, we practice this stuff all the time. We're practicing kindness and blessing, and we can always do more of it. Of course we can. But what about those people that are on the fringe, and we call them those people? Did you hear my words, right? Because we divide them up as it's to us and them. It's those people and it's us. And the truth is, Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. Your neighbor is yourself. Every person is ourself because we're all one and we're all a reflection of that. Another man, this had been so abused by his mom, and he ended up in a program doing Gestalt therapy, and they gave him a chair, and they said, here's your mom, tell her what you think of her. So he did. And he said, okay, now we want you to get in the chair, we want you to be your mom. And he's like, nah, I don't want to do that. And the guy said, okay, so instead of you getting in the chair and being your mom, because this man was extremely violent, and he said, how have you treated others the way your mother treated you? And he said it was as if a 2x4 had hit him right between the eyes, because he realized that he was doing to others exactly what had been done to him. And it, again, shifted. So there's something about the heart. There's something about love. You know, it's no accident that Jesus and the Fillmores and Buddha and the great teachers spoke so much about it, because it is this great harmonizer. It is this great healer in the universe. And even those on the extreme edge are looking for love and acceptance. So it's almost like we have our work cut out for us, right? Because it's one thing to buy someone a coffee. That's great, that's good, but that's kind of like kindergarten level. And I think we're being called now to a higher level to begin to change things, to somehow affect this atmosphere that we find ourselves in that has become so toxic. To come together in community like this. Jesus said, but to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, and bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So the good news is that you have the power to be a blessing. Yes, to your family, to your church community, but bigger than that. You have the power to transform energy through the power of blessing. Pierre Pradervand said, it is impossible to bless and judge at the same time. So hold constantly as a deep, hallowed, intoned thought the desire to bless. For truly, then you shall become a peacemaker, and one day you shall behold everywhere the very face of God. Then there will be no other. It is only me, I, you, us. So let's take this into prayer as we close this morning. And I'm going to start with the vision statement. If you have it memorized, I'd invite you to say it with me. We are an accessible and inclusive spiritual sanctuary for all ages and stages of life. We offer spiritual practices and a community that honors diversity and encourages self-empowerment. We co-create a world that works for all. And so as we go forth, it is with the practice of blessing. Remember, it may start in the head, but it moves to the heart. So I invite you right now to think of someone that you love and that you can bless easily in your mind's eye. I bless you with peace. I bless you with prosperity. Whatever it is you feel, I'm going to shut up and let you speak silently. And if there's someone that you are holding a grudge against, someone that you're feeling resentment towards, move into blessing. I bless you with peace. I bless you with joy. I bless you with kindness. And moving to somebody that you really don't like at all. I bless you with peace. I bless you with joy. And for those who feel like that's just stuck in the head right now, know that where intention goes, energy flows, and that these blessings move from our head to the heart. And it becomes an energy of transformation. And it is for this awareness, in the name and through the power of the living Christ, that we say thank you and amen.